Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I am pleased to present two of my Nashville homies who also happen to be two of the smartest people I've ever met. They also are two of the nicest people you will ever meet, and I promise you will leave smarter and more enlightened than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the session. Also, and this is very important for everybody, you too, speakers, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the host and speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not do this for free. Special thanks to MedJet, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Tennessee Brew Works, and Better Than Booze. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome my good friend, Samantha Saturn. She is Chief Marketing Officer of CSAC Music Group, where she leads global marketing and communications across its portfolio of music rights companies. Sorry, my technology is letting me down. With over 30 years of experience driving growth in music and tech, she previously held roles at Columbia Records and ran her consultancy, Saturn Advisory. Previously, Sam was Chief Marketing Officer of Comixology, which she grew to a 60 million annual multi-platform content business and built the customer base to over 2 million members. Prior to that, she spent 2 years as CMO of artspace.com, establishing it as the leading online marketplace for middle market contemporary art, and 4 years as SVP of digital marketing at Columbia Records. Welcome, Sam. It is a pleasure to finally have you on my platform.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And joining Sam as our featured guest today is Andrew Batey. As an accomplished entertainment and technology entrepreneur whose 20-year career has contributed to major industry transformations across music, social media, and machine learning and AI. The Leadership Music alum has raised $150 million for his own startups and has filed 40+ patents across 7 countries. Now he's the founder and co-CEO of Batey, the music industry leader in combating artificial streaming fraud, aiding artists and record labels in recovering billions of dollars in lost revenue. In his early years, Andrew spent time supporting the launch of multiple top 10 artists, lifestyle brands, and growth hacking web properties such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube before they were the marketing tools we know today. Following his passion for the music business, he harnessed his creative side to release a song under the name Urban Outlaws, which wound up charting #4 on the U.S. country music singles that playlisted on Spotify's Wild Country. Beyond music, Andrew is a serial entrepreneur who has scaled multiple companies in various industries. The 6-time founder launched Side Door Ventures, a venture capital firm where he's invested in 150+ companies comprising over $9 billion in enterprise value. The VC's portfolio companies have successfully raised over $3 billion collectively to date. It is my pleasure to welcome these two rock stars to our platform today. Take it away, guys.
Thanks for having us, Tom.
Hi,
Appreciate it.
Andrew.
Hey, Sam.
Well, this is fun. We thought we'd start by talking a little bit about our history, because we actually met when, although Andrew's a very successful entrepreneur, when he was starting BTAP, he was part of Project Music, which was a program run out of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. And because I'd worked on so many startups in music, I was a mentor. And so we actually met originally through that process, which was a really interesting kind of growth hacking story.
Well, from my perspective, what I loved about it, Sam, was that, I always try to go into places like I'm there to learn, like a bit, try to be a bit humble maybe at first, and try to just, not come in with like an agenda, but just try to learn from everybody. And from my perspective, by the time we started BTAP was my fifth company, so I'd already started it, successfully sold a few of them. But I didn't want to come in there and tell all the mentors I knew more than them because they didn't know a lot, and I hadn't been in the music industry in 10 years, and it'd been a long. I started in music, went to tech, came back, and you were one of the only ones that I feel like we connected really quickly because of our backgrounds, because of the startups, outside of music and then coming into music. And you just didn't talk down to me. You talked with me. And I found that very approachable, and we just became really good friends. So I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else, actually.
That's really
So
nice. Yeah. No, and it is fun to your point. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to talk about, venture back, growth back, thinking about those other pieces of like, how am I going to get from series A to series B and all those kinds of things, which, is a different piece of my experience, but it was so fun to be able to get to do that, especially in Nashville, where I do believe we've also shared that, we think Nashville is undercapitalized and there's a real opportunity for us to grow our economy here through venture, which we will
for
discuss
sure.
later. We will be
Yeah.
relying on you to do that. I know that today our discussion is really about our stories. We obviously both work in music, and we're happy to answer questions. But we really did want to just kind of share a little bit about how we became friends, and that we've found since our original meeting, we met then again, we reconnected through Leadership Music last year and shared that experience together in music, which was interesting. But also, again, we were asked to pair up and introduce each other and, kind of got to know each other in another way. And I just feel like for some reason, we just keep getting thrown into these experiences. So then we were laughing when we were thrown into this one because it's like, oh, we keep finding each other. But anyway, but I think, we were excited just to talk about our process, I think, right, Andrew? Like,
Yeah,
why,
I think we
how
wanted to
we,
highlight a
yeah,
couple of things. Yeah, we walked through a kind of, we'll keep this, we haven't predetermined what we're going to say. So we'll try to keep it fresh for everyone. And honestly, if anyone knows me, they know I also don't know what I'm going to say. I tend to just go off the cuff. So, but general topics, I think we're going to talk about like creativity, trusting our instincts, relationships with others and how we invest in them, work life balance, and our approach to that, and then I think being a risk taker. So I think those are the five things I think we hope to cover a little bit and just kind of chat back and forth, and
yeah,
hopefully answer questions from anyone that has any. Like, feel free, as Tom said, to throw questions in here, and we'll try to answer them as we go, or address them. And um, we try to keep it broad so there was a blank space for us to take this wherever it goes. So
exactly.
should be fun.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the things we talked about first was sort of this idea that even though you're a successful business person and, obviously been working for 30 years in the business, but like when you realize that you're sort of a creative first, and what does that mean to you to be a creative? Like, when was the first time you, I guess, realized that you were sort of a creative first, and how that informs your business decisions?
Yeah, like I would say for me, I'm my creativity shows in the way that the work itself, like how I do things in business, or the deal structures I create, or the unique I try to create a lot of win-win scenarios often in mergers and acquisitions. A lot of people don't know that I've acquired 10 companies over the years and sold probably 20 as a VC and as a founder. And so like how those deals are determined are always unique and creative. There isn't like a standard way this gets done. Everyone has different objectives and things. So I think what I love most, or the way my creativity shows up, is in the actual like business itself, like how I structure companies, or what the company looks like, or how the company operates. That is the art. For me, the art is the company. Um, and that's where I've really found my passion. So people always ask me like, "How were you passionate?" I remember I scaled a dental software company, and someone once was like, "How do you give a shit about dentists this much?" Like, and it's true. Like, I actually don't care about the dentist. I loved that I'd created this like unique way to go to market that someone else hadn't thought about, and I'd operationalize it and made it efficient in a way that others couldn't even dream of, and it was working. And it was like a risk. I didn't know if it would work, and like to me, the beauty and like that test, iteration, and test and iteration, and then success was the art. Like that whole thing was one giant paintbrush of me trying to move pieces. And so like I find my creativity in the sort of entrepreneurial like business itself. And I'm unafraid to say this now. I think I was scared to say this when I was younger, but statute of limitations have far surpassed. But the first time that I knew that I was creative was when I used quadratic equations from algebra to maximize weed profits from two different dealers in high school. And I think that's probably not what they were hoping for in school. But that's I realized that you could use math for real world applications, and I sort of just like ran with that. And I think that's the first time I thought I might be good at this business thing, like truly, because I don't know, it just like came to me that way. My brain always kind of connected these dots this way. So anyway, I know I'm not the best thing to say in a professional setting, but like I said, I kind of say random things. But that's I was 16 when I figured out how to use math to make money.
Yeah, I wish I had that skill. I mean, I can use math to figure out how to grow now, but I can't say that I had the same experience with math. For me, I think for me, it was more, I was raised in a business surrounded by artists. My mom represented artists and crafts, contemporary crafts people, and I was always around people who just literally did what they loved, and they were somewhat nomadic most of the time, but they were the happiest people that I've ever met. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is an interesting life choice, but like when you hang around artists and creatives, their life is rich and they have a different kind of freedom and it's hard work, but there was something about being connected to artists that just was sort of a thread. And so I think when I started thinking about, my own creativity, I think thinking about how to bring more of that to the world in different ways. It ended up being tech and disintermediating other things to make sure that people were getting connected directly to artists, whether it was comic book writers or, you know, songwriters or recording
Yeah.
artists, or visual artists. But like, I think realizing that like you have to tell that story and that's a creative exercise. I think that's where I got the most excited about taking all of that. And then I didn't know it was marketing. It sort of showed up as marketing, but I didn't understand that that's actually what the craft was thinking about how do I connect people to these experiences in a meaningful way and tell them all the things that are beautiful in a way that they can connect to. And it's challenging when you have to do it in a non-tactile environment, or a non-real environment. It's a challenge, but I think that's been the most fun for me, certainly.
It's funny you say that because when I went to undergrad for marketing, and I also didn't understand like truthfully I didn't understand marketing until I was older, in the sense that it was like it came so easy to me that it felt like the degree of the obvious. Like I used to call it that all the time. Like this is the easiest class I've ever taken because it just feels obvious to me. Like you're trying to translate what you think is beautiful to somebody else and get them to see what you see. And I didn't know that really was truly marketing till I was probably more of a professional, but it just felt obvious to me. And for some people, it just clicks, and some people it doesn't. And I think, um, I love that you said that it just showed up like that, because I feel very similar that it just shows up in certain ways. And I think that that's really, really cool.
Yeah. So we also wanted to talk about we again we when we were talking, and obviously through our friendship we've sort of have these ideas that have come up. One of the other ideas that we shared, or I guess themes, is this idea of like really just trusting your own instincts over advice from others, and how maybe there have been times in your life where somebody would say like don't do that or don't take that job or don't do that, and how
Literally every idea.
every day. And so when you have that sort of rudderless sense of self and trusting your own instincts, um, I think it's demonstrated for you an interesting story of transformation, innovation, entrepreneurship. But like, most recently, I know what I think it's going to be, but what's the most recent time you said yes to something before you had it figured out? And like, what was the idea and why? Why did you feel like, it might be a beverage? I'm not sure, but it might not be. But what was something recently that you just were like, I just have to do this, and why?
Yeah. Yeah, recently we were talking to the lead in, I guess. The most recent one was I bought a brewery a couple months ago. And from the outset, you would look at that and go like, why in the hell would you do that? That's like a pretty crazy experience. Um, it does not match the rest of my profile, I would say, in terms of like tech or whatever. But a lot of people don't know when I first started my career, I actually owned a bunch of bars and restaurants, and that gave me the money to start investing in tech, which led me to operating a tech company, which led me purely in tech. And so it's a space I haven't been in a long time, but in a lot of ways, it's kind of my roots. You know, I didn't grow up rich. I grew up working in the service industry. I bagged groceries. I worked at wherever I could to make money, um, and I think that there's something interesting about just like physically touching product and dealing with people. But that's not the reason I bought it. The reason I bought it is, we have this house in Florida. We go to this coffee shop and brewery every day. It is the single most important place for my family because my kids run around like crazy and play there. And it's a mid-century modern spot. Anyone who's been to breweries knows you can just like let your kids loose, and it's like a safe haven. And completely serendipitously, also side like thing, I decided for my 40th birthday I was going to fight, and so I fought in front of 50 million people on TV. I hadn't fought in, like an MMA fight, hadn't fought in 20 years, but I just decided I was going to do it, and I trained for it. And why they lead together is I was wearing this hat from the brewery on TV, and the owner saw me wearing the hat, and then they messaged me and said we're going out of business. And it felt like my life was crumbling. Like here I just had this like crazy high of adrenaline and one of the best experiences of my life, like literally with days before. And then here I'm like, oh no, when we get home, what are we going to do? And what are all the people in this town going to do? Because there's hundreds of families that come here. And this is the staple that everyone, when we're here in town, this is where we all go. And I just thought to myself, like, all the local bands that play there. And I don't know, it felt like as a community thing that this had to exist still. And so again, they had 5 days till they were going out of business. So you want to talk about like deciding to jump both feet in without really thinking about it? Like I just said, fuck it. And I just bought it like really quickly. I was flipping contracts at 2:30 in the morning with the lawyers, and we got it acquired really fast. And I got to do it with a bunch of my friends, a bunch of tech guys who were also thought it was cool. So we have early employees from Snapchat and Ring and the Lakers and Uber, and all these guys just were like, this is really cool. We should do this. And everyone just jumped in really quickly to sort of save it. So anyway, outside of that too, there's also this concept I have around architecting your life. Like you have older kids, and I think it's now they're getting to become real adults. And I think that my kids, I started late. I have a 4 and a 1-year old, and I've thought a lot about. I didn't think it'd be this early, but like architecting my life in a way that they can learn entrepreneurship in a safe space. And I think that comes from having a place that all your kids' friends want to go hang out. When I think about like who was the hangout house that you hung out with, like my house wasn't. Everyone was scared of my dad. Like we had my friend Nick's house was the hangout house. So like who's the hangout house? Where do your kids hang out? Can you create a safe space for them to hang out and learn something? And so even now, that we have this brewery, my kids don't know, my 4-year-old doesn't know we own it. We tell him we work there. And he shows up and moves the cans around in the little uh, refrigerators and helps move inventory from the walk-in fridge to the tap room fridge. And the other day I walked in because my wife runs all the day-to-day stuff there. And he had a little clipboard and he was having a one-on-one with his coffee girl. And I just was like, this is
Yeah.
amazing to me that this is just translating to him in such a natural way. And I think that's the kind of environment I hope to create, so that one day he can take something that seems low stakes now and turn it into something that's probably larger and more beautiful like later on.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
that was
mean,
a
I
very
grew
long
up.
question, but
No, it's
response.
that's it's sort of, we were talking. I started in retail because again, my family ran this business, and I have two sisters, but for some reason, it's not that we didn't all love it because we did, but I just loved retail. I loved selling, and again, making that connection like, well, how did the artist make this? And what about this porcelain is interesting and different from the other? And how can I explain and share this beautiful thing with somebody? And so, to your point, I was always there, and that experience and people in my community were always there. Everybody would be there. And so there was something about that idea of like working hard and seeing how it was to be in a family where both my parents worked for themselves and they were both incredibly entrepreneurial, but seeing people really just work hard as a kid and being in those businesses and working in those businesses. I do think it's a really valuable experience. And I also think, you get to do it in a way that's sort of like you said, it's a little bit more like family, and it's a little bit of a safer place. But for kids to get to learn about business from you, at least for me, it's my one of my greatest joys now is to watch my teenagers kind of shift from being mad that I'm busy or traveling to being like really respectful that I'm working on different projects and staying connected to the community and doing work that's meaningful and supporting artists in their careers and their crafts. And now I can see them being like, okay, I get it. Like, there's sacrifices, but like it's a good thing. And now they're working and I see them working and they've gotten that work ethic. So that's a good part. You'll see that it
Yeah.
really does make a difference, I think.
And what's interesting is like I'm gonna throw it back to you because I just know a little bit about you. So I'm gonna juice you up a little here or pump your tires. But like you created like an arts festival and you are still as much as you love, you were talking about making like being around people making things and seeing how the art is, like you that never really left you. Me either. But now that we're like in a business context, I think we find these creative outlets in other places. And for you, like you've done, maybe you could share a little bit about the arts thing that you've built and how cool that is.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was very much I moved back to Nashville after living in New York for 20 years and being very separated from all of that and being deep in tech. And I think when I moved back with my family, to your point, I had this idea that like I really wanted to get back to like a different kind of place, and to have like my feet in the earth and a little piece of land and a home I could, walk my, it was like I had this idea, but really it was quite difficult at that time for me to find meaningful work in Nashville. When I moved back in 2014, it wasn't I didn't get to CSAC until 2018. And in those times, I think I misread kind of what would happen in Nashville at that time for me. And even though I felt like I was at the top of my game, it wasn't like an easy place. And so in the end, I was sitting here consulting back with clients in New York and really spending most of my time back and forth in New York. And I was like, everybody kept saying to me, "Where's the American Artisan Festival? Aren't you bringing it back?" And I said, "Oh, no, no, it's been gone. My parents passed away and we shut it down." And I think it was so interesting that Nashville was yearning for this experience, like everyone in the community. And so I was like, to your point earlier, I was like, well, I love it and I'll just make it happen because it's something I miss too. And then as I did it, I kept seeing that there was sort of more that Nashville was craving, and there was more opportunity to build, I think, a story around Nashville as a visual arts city. And the more I peeled back and looked at the contemporary craft and the visual art and the galleries and the contemporary art, like I was just like, Nashville has a marketing problem, really. At the end of the day, we have a marketing problem, which is that we're an incredibly powerful music city and we are the music city of the world. But we haven't represented our creative community broadly enough. And so I just thought, well, we should try to do more for them. And so, American Artisan and Artville really just came out of a civic responsibility to sort of try to tell a bigger story so that people will come to Nashville to experience more than music, to experience a bigger story. I have a business partner that does festivals full time, so I'm really just a creative liaison for that, but it's really important work. And I love doing it because it gets me again into that tactile space and working with artists who are really building a practice and pushing them into new spaces like public art and experiential programs. It's just like it's incredibly exciting. And you won't, if you don't get to the festival, it's like a music festival, you miss it. So it is very experiential, which is really fun. So yeah, it will be in September, and I hope for those who are in Nashville, you will come and check it out.
Hey, just a quick shout out to Tyler and Sam for saying positive comments in the chat. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that too. Just wanted to let you know we're watching the chat and wanted to shout you guys out. I think talking about the art thing is interesting because you kind of just need to trust your instincts to go for it. And you brought it up a little bit earlier, but when I think back about some of, it's funny in hindsight how people say I was smart. No one wants to talk about the ones that I can run victory laps here all day, but like we talk more about the ones I failed on. I think that I fail a lot. I think it doesn't show that probably in the
Yeah.
bio, because every time you win and you win in a unique way, everyone celebrates you for being unique. But when you were first doing it, they all laugh at you or they tell you it's stupid. And like when I decided I wanted to release a country music song, everyone thought I was crazy. And like, let me tell you how hard that was. That was actually really difficult. But my thought was I used to break artists. This woman in my office told me I was a boomer and didn't know what it took anymore to do it again. I didn't really care about being an artist myself, but I wanted to go through the journey to better understand what artists go through. Because I kept thinking, like, when we started BDAP, we started it to help artists and ended up finding a fraud problem, becoming a leader in fraud detection for the space. But we kind of I lost that connection with the artists. And so I wanted to kind of go through that process. And that's why I used NFTs as our pictures so that it wasn't tied to me as an individual. I made it a collective and all the money went to charity. But I learned so much through one, I learned I'm a horrible artist, but going through that process. But everyone told me, you're an idiot, don't do this. I'll never forget when I had to get a song cleared because I wasn't going to write the song. I went and got it. I'll never forget being so embarrassed when Mike Molinar called me and was like, what is happening right here? Why do I have this song clearance like for you from one of our artists? And I was just like, oh, fuck. Like, I was trying to go under the radar, and I was so embarrassed that I had to like explain what I was trying to learn. And I think from a learning experience, you just learn so much from trying different things, even if you fail. And for everyone out there, some of the ones I've failed on to make me sound equally crazy is I tried to be the first artist on the moon. Spent like years developing a rover with my friend Jordan to try to go to the moon and draw into the sand. And we were 3 months from launch, and it the company that was supposed to send the rover up went out of business and lost like 90 million of NASA's money. So I was a byproduct of that, but you lose in lots of different ways you can't control sometimes. And I tried to build like a F1 for horse racing with some members of the Forbes family, and that did not go super well. It turns out that you need an operator who wants to do it full time. Like that was horrific. I tried to do a 3D mammogram unit with some radiologists from Yale for trying to improve breast imaging for breast cancer for women. I did that, spent a lot of money and time building trucks out, only to realize there wasn't enough profit margins to be a sustainable business. So, I've definitely failed a lot as well. And I think every one of those, everyone goes, what do you have? Why would you get into this space? Like, why would you even do this? And the answer is like curiosity. Like, I don't know. My instincts tell me to go try something. I decide I'm going to go do it. I feel like you and I have talked a lot about when I encourage all of our employees to go do a side, like go do a project, go like go release an album, go create a cool SaaS product on the side, like go do things. Because I think when you go to these spaces and push yourself to expand and have to like adapt and learn, you always come back with something more meaningful for the core business. And so I don't try to like box people in and say like you have to do this exclusively. I'm always the person that's probably the opposite. That's like, let me give you some funding to go figure this out. Because I think there's value ultimately in both of us winning. And I think that's, you just learn so much. And, I don't know, have you seen a space where you like, I'm curious from your perspective too, like what you've like instinctually just gone and done, or some of the things that like you feel like you've, um, gone against the grain, a little bit and sort of just executed on. Because I think it's
Um,
easy for people to celebrate you after you've won, but no one sees you sleeping in vans and hauling shit around and doing all the things that are hard to like figure things out.
yeah, I feel like most of those decisions have been much more about like life first, family first stuff, which, I think is when you're a really hard driving professional woman is a difficult piece to address because you sort of are already trying to like be a little bit more, maybe a little less than on that score, trying to compete, in a man's world. And so I remember after 9/11, I was in New York and my business had crashed and everything was so difficult in early tech. And I had sort of managed to float my business through it. Like I had sort of, I had to let go of my employees and like, I mean, it was an incredibly difficult time. It was like a total up and then a total crash. And I was very young and I figured out how to like, cover the debts and I was growing my business again. And I sort of went back to doing it myself. And I sort of saved enough money to actually, you know, I was like, maybe I should buy an apartment in New York. Like I've never been able to afford real estate. And then I had sort of a funny situation with somebody where they were like, yeah, they were talking about travel, and I'm a huge traveler. It's like my, I have incredible wanderlust, and every dollar I spend that is outside of what I have to is to travel. So that's sort of my thing. And I had worked so hard for so long. I had not really, other than business trips, taken any time off. And so I remember I called my dad and I was like, Dad, I think I want to take a year to travel. Like, I think I could either do that or I could buy an apartment. And I remember I was laughing because he's a real estate attorney, but he was like, well, you know what the answer is, right? I said, what? He goes, you got to travel. And I was like, exactly. I just needed to make sure. So anyway, I took all the money I had saved and just said, this is going to be a time to like reflect and regroup and detach from all that happened. And I think I'll get perspective. And so I went by myself and traveled around the world for a year. And every single person said to me, it was, after 9/11, I was terrified about, and as a woman traveling alone, there were all these things, and everybody was like, you can't go, like, you can't go by yourself. You can't do this. You can't shut down your business. It's fine. Everything about the decisions. And I just remember thinking like, I can't think of anything that I'm not worried about, everything. So it was a good example. And when I came back, I just felt like I had a completely different lens on what I needed. Nothing has been more transformative for me as a career marketer and just as a person. And I encourage people all the time to take sabbaticals and take time because I think you come back in a different way, and I'll never regret taking that time. So to me, that was an example of something where I left everything to do something that was really not necessarily professional, but it has always made me a better professional. And I have many circumstances like that where you sort of have to swing out to take care of something with family or child rearing or aging parents, and you will never. I think you'll never regret that time. So I always say you should try to do that when you can to make you a better person.
I wish I had done that. That was my regret earlier, was not doing something like that. I wilded out and did crazy stuff, but I didn't like just take that gap year and backpack and travel or do any of the things like that. And I think again, maybe from my family context, I grew up with two military parents, a really strong mom who was a military officer and also a father who was similar. And I remember being like in fourth grade writing my 5-year goals. Like everything was about what my
Yes.
goals were and where my check-in points were, and having quarterly meetings with my parents about like where I was against my goal planning. And so from the moment I got out, I was just go, go, go. Like I just need to win. And I had this like chip on my shoulder to win and this chip on my shoulder to like succeed and make something of myself. And I think I I wish I had taken more time to be a kid at that time. Like to not so much even just a young adult. I went from one startup to another startup to another startup to another. It was like I win and I just say, okay, what's the next thing? Like I'm just like I found joy in the building of it and not necessarily the celebration of it afterwards. And I think I really respect that you just said, I'm not buying an apartment and I'm just gonna go travel. Like I wish I had done that. I missed that was a regret
Well,
for
and I
sure.
think you also, at least for me, being alone and being detached from technology and not having at the time they were very bad cell phones because I'm older, but, really detaching and like really, really doing that. I think particularly when you're in startups and when you're a builder and when you're a connector, you know, like that was work for me. And I think
Yeah.
also, that gets back to some of the other things we've been talking about, which is like, we're both incredibly hard driving workers. And so I think when you work, part of the work is to figure out how to like make sure that you're checking yourself and giving yourself the time to be creative and to be a good professional. So I'm curious, like, you know, I mean, I'm actually kind of terrified to ask because I know you a little bit to know like there's got to be some life hacking happening, but like, how do you like look at a week? Like, how do you organize your time to ensure that you are addressing those things? And it's like, do you have any tips or thoughts of like how you've constructed that for yourself, especially now where you have so many demands and opportunities and creative ideas and
Yeah, so I think maybe it's insecurity, but I hate going things alone. I really believe in teamwork and building teams. And I think that my strength has always been maybe surrounding myself with two things. One, my mom really ingrained in me leading from the front. I'll never ask anyone to do something I haven't done myself. If I ask you to sweep, it's because I'm sweeping at the same time. If I ask you to code something, I've already tried to code it potentially and suck at it. I'm like tried to do everything that I ask you to do. Um, that's just like how I've been brought up, and I'm always the first one through the door. I think with that, then I think people respect you a lot and are willing to do some of the heavier lifting with you. And as long as you are loyal to them, I think also coming from a military family, loyalty is my like number one uh, cultural driver and thing that matters to me. Like I try not to talk trash about somebody that I'm close with. I'm not the gossip person. If someone's gossiping in front of me, I'm just like not into it. It's just not my jam. I think oh, look, believe me, I have no problem with confrontation. If I don't like you, the opposite is true, where you probably know right away. Like I just am not good at like the inauthentic faking of friendship. Um, but I think the point of it is just that because of that, I've always built teams around me and tried to reward the team and push everyone up with me as opposed to like leveraging them. I'm not standing on their shoulders. We're all kind of going together. And so I say that because when I first started BTAP with Poria, people would have probably asked like, why Poria? Like Poria was a younger engineer on one of my last companies. But he was so brilliant, and we learned so much together from playing foosball. And I really, we played foosball every day. We built this ELO ranking system where we competed against each other because we were nerding out, and it was like a whole thing for the whole company. But I learned so much like about him and how smart he was, and asking his approach to specific things. I started working with him on more technical projects, and I just realized how brilliant he was and under recognized. And I thought he'd be the perfect co-founder. I think the same thing with Morgan. When I first started BTAP with Morgan, I told him I'm a flight risk. Like my biggest problem for you is that in 3 to 4 years, I might like look at something else and just want to solve that problem or be really curious about it. And what I need are people around me who I can go 0 to 1 all day long. Like that's super easy for me. But when it gets boring and it's just like a regular business and there aren't hard problems to solve, like I'm a flight risk. Like that is a real problem for me. So I need to surround myself around people who really love these types of components. And I think Morgan is that exact opposite for me in that business. With the fund, when I started the fund, it was like very serendipitous. Like I had a family come to me and say, keep in mind, I sold my first company in 2007. So I privately invested for 10 years while I was building tech company. And family came to me and said, we really want you to start a fund. And I was like, I'm not a VC. Like, I don't know shit about banking. Like I'm a founder. And they said, it's great. That's what we want. And they gave me $100 million to start a fund. And I told them my thought process was not around having one big fund. I think small funds have higher return multiples. And my thought process was probably crazy. Everyone thought I was nuts, but I launched 5 funds at the same time, all with a different vertical. And the way I did it was I said, look, I'm not going to have time to run every single one of these funds. That's not realistic. And also each one has a different thesis. So I went to, what is my strength? My strength is like all of these founders I know. So I went to all of these founders, and I said, hey, if you're like me, you sell your company, you have this identity crisis. Like, who am I? Like, I'm now done doing this thing. And I probably get depressed for like 6 or 8 months while I figure it out. And I spend like 5 or 6 more months trying to figure out what I want in life. And then a year later, something hopefully materializes and I like go a different direction. And I'm like, if you're a startup founder who's done this, you literally like you sell your company. It's like you've sold your identity and you no longer know who you are, and but you're very valuable. You know how to build businesses, and people respect you. So I went to all these founders I knew and I said, look, why don't you come help me at the fund? This is a no fees fund. Like, we're not taking fees. Like, we're not in it for the checks. Like, none of us make money from the fund. Let's just like put money into great companies and help these companies grow. So the startup fund I started has 23 exits across the team. We have a guy that built two robots on Mars, one on one on the moon. The engineering team at Cruise. We have three prop tech exits. One of the biggest HR like firms in the world. We have a bunch of hard tech, like crazy stuff.
They each became sort of the lead on each of those investment projects, and then you didn't have to
But
do
each
it.
fund.
Yeah, each
Well,
fund.
I weigh in as a voice,
Right.
and I'm a collective part of the IC, but I respect them enough and value their opinions enough, and they value me enough that we have this like relationship that we can do this. So each fund has its own investment committee, it's an IC, but it's really run by a partner I very much trust that I am the co-GP on and sign off on the paperwork. No one can do it. Like, ultimately, it's my throat to choke. So if it's wrong, it's my fault. But I empower everyone else to make these decisions and then reward them that way. So instead of most funds, though, people don't realize, are set up where the GPs at the top take like 99% of the carry, meaning like when a company sells, they take most of the upside for themselves, and all the people doing the actual work get very little. I sort of flipped that the other way around, and I said, I'm actually happy to take the least amount, and I will bring everybody that I think is valuable to help these companies grow into the fold, and they all make a ton of money when these companies exit, and I do okay. But like, I'm not by far the biggest leader in that. Everybody else doing and carrying the water is. I'm just facilitating this team to sort of have this outcome. And I think, to answer your question, that also takes pressure off you because you are not the one doing all of the work. And as long as you build the teams around you to do this, then you can succeed. The same with the brewery. Okay, so I did some financing, could see the ops and like what big parts need to move. But my wife runs the day to day. I trust her implicitly. Like, she does. She's the one having the one on one. She's the one dealing with, any staffing issues, and I trust her. I wouldn't be married to her if I didn't trust her.
Yeah. Well, and we talk all the time. It's not like being the master of outsourcing necessarily, but I always have friends telling me, like, how did you solve, I do feel like finding your people, we talked about this a lot too, like, you know, your support people and being able to ask for help and also being able to creatively energize ideas without actually having to run them day to day, which I talked about the festival as an example. Like, you know, I knew I couldn't do that full time. There was not a chance, but to be able to even just have a creative liaise to something here and there, but still be able to do this and still be able to do that and still be able to, sit on a board if it's something you're really passionate about and put time into that. I think this idea, I remember talking to you about it when I get overwhelmed. I have this thesis around Einstein time, which we've talked about, which I read about in a book called The Big Leap, which I really recommend. But when I was at a time of like a lot of stress, I read this book and it was really transformative for me because it was about how, if you look at Darwinian time being it's a fixed, right? It's like 24/7, 365. And so when you're trying to do things, you could get like really overwhelmed by like the limitations and constraints, right? Or, as we've talked about, you could look at the theory of relativity and just be like, it's super expansive. And like, I actually have enough time to do all the things I want to do in a day and in a life. And like, why not flip that on its head and be like, why can't I do more actually and feel great about that? And like, I have all the time I need because it's what I want to do with the time I want to do. And I want to work with the people I want to work with. And I want to work with my team whom I love working with. And I want to, you know, build this other idea. So I think when you have this idea of time maybe being a little bit less than constraint, it gives you the freedom to just think like, why not? As opposed to, oh, here's all the reasons you can't. And so I try to just say that over and over, like, well, why not? Why not have dinner with this person I really want to see? And we've talked about how because of that curiosity and that ability to be expansive, when everybody's like, how do you do it? You're just like, well, that's how I then met the person to do the thing, or that's how I then had the meeting.
Totally.
Somebody said, oh, would you do this with me? Would you help me with this idea? And you're like, yeah, of course I can. I'm going to figure it out. And then, of course, being able to say no is the same idea. Like, that isn't going to expand my ability to be creative. So I probably shouldn't make time for that because it's not feeding the.
Yeah. And I think people are so boxed out of like, you know, they try to fit themselves and conform. Like they're scared of, I think often you're scared of I will say I have an advantage in that I care less about, I probably will never work for someone else ever again. So the advantage I have is that I can do things without worrying about the optics often. And so, to your point, you just do things that you're curious about. But I think sometimes people are so scared to leave that box to try and do that thing because of the optics. Like, oh, what if it looks bad for me? What if I mess up? What if I fail? The most freeing thing anyone ever told me as a founder was we got a check, and the VC gave me. His name's Marvin Lau. He used to call us beat crap. He'd be like, "Hey, beat crap, what are you working on today?" And I remember when he gave me the check, he said, "Just die admirably. I have less than 1% hope for you, but I'm writing you this check because that's better than most, and I hope that you just go down with the ship if it doesn't work out."
Yeah.
And I don't know why there was something freeing about the fact that he was already expecting to lose, and he just wanted me to try my best. And I think that that's pretty consistent with most investors. And I think I now give that advice to every founder that I invest in. Do is just die admirably, uh, because I need them to know that they can go for broke. Like think big, dream big, go for it, feed your curiosity. I think that there was like a freedom that I think that if you work a every 9 to 5 job, you probably don't have. Your boss probably isn't telling you, you know, to die admirably or to just go for it, you know. And I think that there's this cool freedom in that, and I think I don't know that part I think is lost on a lot of people, and I think they're so scared to do these things, and maybe we are a little bit biased because we have these abilities. Often at the top, it's a little easier to make these moves because you're not managing up at the same time. I'm not sure I would have done that at 20 the same way, but I think that I always just try to tell everyone to just go for it. Like I also have been the naysayer. Like I have a really close friend in Andreas. He's like a huge influencer now on TikTok. Let me tell you, when he first told the group chat that he was going to become an influencer on TikTok, the amount of roasting that happened for probably the better part of 2 years. But look at Andreas doing another shitty video. Look at Andreas. Oh, like look at this little influencer. Oh, hi fans. Like everybody was just roasting him and chirping constantly. And he's got millions of followers now and has actually succeeded. And the funniest part is like now everyone who was hating on him is like, hey, can I get an invite to the party? Like everybody is like, we're all best friends from being kids. But it's one of those things where you just have to like believe in yourself enough to do it, even if the optics aren't good, even from the people closest to you. Like if you believe that you can do this thing, you just go. And I think that I don't know. I think a lot of people don't do that. Maybe that's why I really value you a lot, Sam. It's like I feel like when I come to you, you say, "Why not?" Like I'm like, "What do you think of this?" You're like, "Why not?" I'm like, "You're right. Why not?" Like I need people like that around me. You know.
I know. I do sometimes think too, you know, there's been a lot of conversation. Obviously, we're all dealing with all of the impacts of technology, both positive and challenging. And I am curious as an entrepreneur who employs lots of people. You know, I have a 17-year-old son um, who loves music and who's a diehard creative for sure. I mean, he makes movies and he's just like a maker and also math like you, but like doesn't seem to care. So we'll see how that all rolls. But you know, if you were like talking to a kid who like wants to come and work at one of your companies, like what do you feel like you would say today? Like, you know, if you want to work in music or if you want to work in one of these businesses, like what kind of people or what kind of training or like what do you think is in front of us right now for the future of our business for young people?
I look for athletes. I really believe there's a, my wife says it all the time to our kids, which I believe came from somebody political. So we're not supposed to talk about politics on here, but they said, if you're kind and useful, you'll always have a place. And I think that that's probably true. I think that that's what I try to tell my kids. If you're kind and useful, like you will have a place. And I tell that to young professionals too. The useful part's important. You can't just be kind and not useful. This isn't a charity; these are businesses. You also can't be useful and not kind because no one wants to work with you. And especially the music is a relationship-driven business, you know. And every business is. It's not just music. Like that's how industry works. You do business with people you like. If you came back to me and said this guy is cheaper, but you're not my friend. I'm still paying more money for my friend. Like that's, that's kind of how it works. And so I think that those two things are true. And from that context, then it's just asking yourself, how can you be kind and how can you be useful? And how you're useful is adding tools to your tool belt. Like if you see AI coming, be like, why aren't you trying every single model from every single possible AI tool so that you become the expert in your office space around what these tools do? Like nothing is stopping you from learning and providing these assets to your company. Like you don't need to be told to do something. Like you proactively just go do it. And then you become like when I first, okay, I have invested in a company and then became the managing partner of this company where we were building Facebook tools. We were building Facebook games on Facebook in 2006 and 7 when it's still EDU based. It sounds obvious now. At the time, I would go and pitch brands and they would laugh in my face and say, why would we ever invest in Facebook? We have a website. Facebook is for kids. No one understood that you could like power this group of people to go buy something. When I did it for a musician, I found this kid at a bonfire in Nantucket with my partners, and we made him the #1 iTunes, #7 Billboard album, period, overall, all albums with no label, all from Facebook. Everyone thought we were crazy. But immediately, everybody then asked us, well, how do we pay you to do this for us? Like we had become useful. And before that, they couldn't see the use. And so I think my point is, if you go and do things and become useful, people will find a way to use it. And then you find your place and sort of grow into the industry. So I always just tell kids or young professionals, like, be useful, be kind. You'll find a way. And in being useful and kind, I would just like to give a shout out to Shelby Kennedy, who I saw on here. He is, I often call him like my uncle. When I first started BTAP, I went to him. I was introduced to him from another friend named Lex, and he was at TuneCore at the time. And I went to him and said, "This is what I'm building." And he was just the kindest, most nicest, humble person who made so many introductions for me. And it felt, my mom's from Chattanooga. Not a lot of people know that. I grew up a lot in Tennessee, and it just felt like I was hanging out with my uncle every single time. And he is the most like kind-hearted, good-spirited human that I just want the very best for. So shout out to Shelby. I think you're a shining example of being kind and useful. Just randomly, just seeing you in the comments here.
Yeah, we were discussing the other day, somebody was asking me, and I'm like, I've never understood why you can't just be kind or nice. Like I've never had a business experience where couldn't be successful by being kind and nice. And so I think it's so important. And I talk to people about this all the time. And I think especially for women, there's this sense that like, it's too female or there's something wrong with, really being an empath, but it's actually like a secret strength because the more you ask people for feedback and check in and be willing to sort of, be humbled by others' opinions and others' ideas and to sort of still show up with kindness, no matter what business, I'm certain that it's the reason that I'm sitting here today because I'm always interested in coming back to people and saying, how are you and what can I do to support you and how can I help you with whatever you want to do? And I don't I don't feel like there's ever a time where you can't help people ever in any circumstance. So I do feel like that's been a superpower for me and I hope that it's something that people take away when they meet me because I think it's so important and I hope everybody knows that there's really no reason not to have that in your management plan.
Well, it's another reason I believe Nashville is so well positioned. So if there's one thing growing companies in Silicon Valley and stuff, the one thing that is very uniform is collaborativeness. There's so much abundance of VC money and brain trust there that I remember being at a coffee shop once when I wasn't in music, of all things, discussing having a data problem for there's this concept of a foreign key in a snowflake shape. It's kind of more technical, but my point is we were having a struggle with sort of getting results quickly and queries. And I was just commenting on it, waiting for my coffee. And the head of analytics from Pandora was in front of me. This must have been 2011 or something way back. And he turns around and goes, "Oh, I can solve your problem for you." And he grabs a napkin and just starts drawing a data map and explaining to me how these keys need to need to relate to each other. And he then jumped on a call for like 3 weeks and free consulted our entire data team to fix our data architecture just on the side. And it's like there is this collaborativeness that comes from San Francisco, where because there isn't a scarcity of a relationship or a scarcity of money, everybody wants to help everybody. And so, oh, you're going for a funding round? I'm in a funding round now. The natural instinct in most other markets is to hoard the VC relationships you have till they've determined what they want for you. Where in San Francisco, it's opposite. It's like, oh, let me introduce you to 7 more founders I think are cool, and everybody rises together. And I think there isn't like a I win, which means you have to lose. Like we can all win together. And why I say that in San Francisco, it truly makes San Francisco unique. And the only other place I've ever seen it is Nashville. And Nashville, especially with music. When I first came to Nashville, it wasn't about like project music. Why did I come to project music? It wasn't about money. We didn't need money. It wasn't about anything other than Nashville being the best entry point to meeting people who were willing to have a conversation with you and be collaborative. And the amount of people that are willing to just go to a coffee with you and hear you out and tell you good or bad what they think of your business, but like have the conversation and be willing to be helpful. It is not like that. I mean, we made this joke that I could spend 3 months and 12 reschedules to get a meeting with one executive in like LA or New York, or I could just ask for a coffee in Nashville and have it done next week. And it's crazy, but true. And I think Nashville is one of the only places I've ever seen outside of San Francisco or Silicon Valley, and specifically where collaboration is the #1 driver and everyone is a community. And that's why I have so much faith in Nashville. That's why I love Nashville so much. I find so much power and just like abundance. And I literally can't imagine a city I like more than Nashville. And the reason is because of that community and the collaborativeness. And while you guys don't have it yet, and Nashville doesn't have it yet on the technical front, I really believe because of that community aspect and that sort of barrier, like breakage of that barrier where everyone can win together, it is the best positioned city, I think, to compete on so many fronts, not just music, but tech. Anything you can dream of, I think, can happen in Nashville. And I think that's because it's cultural.
No, I agree. No, listen, I agree with you. It was the same thing with sort of this gumption around this idea of like, why can't we have a nationally recognized art fair? Like, why can't we have, an opportunity for us to, build, VC and growth? I do want to ask, because we're wrapping up soon, does anybody have any questions for us that maybe you haven't shared on the chat, or anything that you want us to address? Or, I mean, to the extent that anyone has anything else to share, we'd be happy to answer any questions. And if not, I feel like
we'll do rapid fire and call it a wrap.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, oh, hi. I'm like, I love the friends. John, this is amazing.
Who was the artist you helped blow up back in your Facebook? Oh. His name was Sam Adams. He went by Boston's Boy.
Yes.
He did the Sammy Adams Boston's Boy EP.
Well, we really appreciate the friends coming to say hi and being supported by our our community. And obviously, we both take our relationships very seriously in music in Nashville and beyond. So let's do a little rapid fire. Favorite creative outlet outside of work?
I love wake surfing. I just love it. I think it's the funnest thing. Anyone can do it. You could be old, you could be young. It's low stakes. My body doesn't hurt when I'm finished. Everyone has a good time. Who doesn't like being on the lake? You?
I think cooking these days.
Okay.
Yeah, I think cooking.
Most used app on your phone?
Well, right now I'm doing this coursive, which is, teaching me AI tools. I'm about a third of the way through, and I'm just, really trying to build my skills. So right now that's my most used app.
Mine's ChatGPT. I think I use it more than Google at this point. I constantly ask it questions. I also set it up so it explains things. If no one's ever done this, just quick tip, you can tell it to explain things to your 5-year-old. And so for me, Every time I don't know an answer to a question, I like ask ChatGPT. I let my kid even ask, and it'll explain it into Cheaty, which is the name of my son. I explain it to him that a 5-year-old can understand, and so now gives me answers constantly. Like, here's the answer, and then here's Cheaty's answer. And so it's just really funny. But I love ChatGPT.
Yeah, I do
Um,
too.
I'll
Uh,
ask you, what place inspires you the most? I already said Nashville, so everyone knows that now. I think I was glowing and gushing about Nashville. How about yourself?
um, it's pretty much like any beach. I was thinking about a particular beach in Portugal that I got to visit last summer called Porto Covo that I basically would like to go live in again. But I would say just the ocean in general for me is just where I'm the most inspired and happy. Yeah. Um, Give me a song that brings you back to your center when you need it.
Friends in Low Places, Garth Brooks. No, it's no secret. Garth is my number. I often have said a lot on podcasts that I've built so many businesses in the hopes that I meet Garth one day. Like I love Garth Brooks. He was my very first concert when I was a kid. I went with my mom. I think it's the nostalgia of it all, like with my parents and listening to the music and going to the concert and all the things that come from that. And I think just the song just kind of reminds you where you come from, and I like that. How about
Uh,
yourself?
um, well, I was just listening earlier to this. It's like I'm back on this theme of time, but there's a song called "There Will Be Time" by Mumford and Sons and Baba Mall, which is just beautiful and a really nice hybrid. And it always makes me think about like again the expansiveness of time and how you can like enjoy it and just kind of kick back. So that's the song that brings me back to center. And what about your favorite restaurant in Nashville?
It's not really a restaurant, but the place I go to Nashville is Dose. So they have food and they have coffee and they used to have this drink that they took off, but I still try to order called the Shakerado. And it's I think because they cold shake this espresso for so long, it was probably too many people were ordering it. It took too long for them to make, but it is my favorite place. I love going there and I hang out there quite a bit.
That's a
And I
good
did win my fight, Roland. Uh, Andrew, did you win your fight at 50? I was 40 and I did win. Yeah,
exactly.
thank you.
That's awesome.
How about
So,
you? Favorite restaurant? And then we
oh,
can wrap
well,
up.
it's like, I think for consistency and deliciousness across the board, I feel like Vui's Kitchen is just always a go-to for me. I was thinking about dishes that I love in different places, but like Vui's is a constant for me. Love it.
Oh, that's great. Cool. Well, this has been amazing, Sam.
One
I love
last thing
you.
I want to say
Oh,
I
go
love
for
you
it.
too, but Andrew is at in Calgary at the Stampede at the moment, finishing up, I guess, right? Or
Yeah,
uh
I just finished.
so anyway, for all of us next year, I'm told that we need to be at the Stampede and that's the
Stampede's where it's at. And Calgary, no one knows, has the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. It's this beautiful facility with like pianos that are hundreds of years old that you can actually play. They have all these recording studios for artists to record for free. It is like one of the coolest. They pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into this facility, and it's absolutely stunning right in the middle of Calgary. And there's a lot of philanthropy for artists up there. Like a lot of the big billionaires up there support the artists at the Met, support some of the top jazz musicians in the world. A lot of the country music artists living in Nashville are quietly supported by a lot of the Canadian entrepreneurs that help fund them and help get their records done. And I think it's a really great place. So if you ever get a chance to go to Calgary and you ever get a chance to go to Stampede, please feel free to email me. Happy to connect you guys. But it's a really wonderful experience.
Yeah, and I just want to close by saying that both of us, are always door open kind of people, but I didn't talk about our business much here at CSAC, but obviously if you're a label or a publisher or a songwriter or a recording artist and you want to have advice or counsel or help or support in collecting money, I saw some people asking about royalties and sort of the state of the market. But if we can ever be of service to you here at CSAC Music Group, or if I can ever be supportive of you in getting any of that sort of support in those areas, please reach out to me directly. I'm always here. My door's always open.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Guys, I hate to
Thanks for
I hate to cut
participating.
this off. This has been fantastic. We didn't even get to talk about beat app and streaming fraud because the wisdom and just overall philosophies that you guys have been talking about are timeless and just incredible. Loyalty, the golden rule, empathy. I mean, everything you all talked about today is so spot on. So, to the audience, I promised you'd leave smarter and more inspired than you arrived. I guarantee you we delivered on that. Sam and Andrew, you guys are just fantastic at what you do. Keep doing it. And Andrew, don't be a stranger next time you come back home here. Okay.
I won't be.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Take care, folks. See you next
Thank
week.
you so much.